Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Season 11, Episode 51, overall 601 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph, Ottawa. Check out their website, barrycullen.com, for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with a great selection of Cadillac vehicles and all-electric vehicles as well. You can call the dealership at 519-824-0210 and tell them Chris Palme sent you, or you can email them at info@barrycullen.com. Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been family run and operated here in the city of Guelph since 1969, and Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been the official sponsor of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show for the past 3 years. I hope everyone is doing well on this Friday, October 10th, 2025. And before we get our guests on today, I want to wish everybody in Canada a very happy Canadian Thanksgiving on Monday, October 14th. Some people celebrated on the Sunday or Monday, so wishing everybody here a happy Canadian Thanksgiving. And I'm looking forward to my guest tonight. This is his first appearance on our show. We met through Twitter X, and my guest's name is Howie Mooney. He is the co-host of the Sports Lunatics Show, a sports history podcast. And Mooney has written 4 books, including his latest book about the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders, who nearly became a miracle, nearly upsetting the powerhouse Edmonton Eskimos, who were on their way to winning 5 Grey Cups in a row from 1978 to 1983. And they were also close to upsetting them in the 81 Grey Cup at the Big O in Montreal, which I still remember as a 9-year-old kid. And I'm looking forward to bringing on Howie Mooney, who's also done some media work for the Ottawa Senators, the Ottawa Lynx, and also covered the junior A hockey scene in Ottawa as well. Good evening, Howie. How are you?
Chris, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to be with you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And how are things in your neck of the woods in Ontario? In Ottawa?
Oh, it's a little chilly, especially at night now. It's Thanksgiving weekend. I was just looking up what happened on this weekend in Ottawa football history, and I go back to 81, of course, because it's in the book. And it was Thanksgiving. Ottawa was in Edmonton to play the Eskimos that weekend. The Eskimos had beaten Ottawa in the very first game of the season by a score of 47-21. And this time it was a little bit closer. It was 24-6 for Edmonton. They got 2 defensive touchdowns against Ottawa, but there were some signs that the Rough Riders could be taking some forward steps. J.C. Watts was starting to look like he could acclimate to the Canadian game as opposed to the university game that he was playing in the United States in Oklahoma back before he came to Canada with the just basically a running quarterback. But he was starting to learn to throw from the pocket. He was starting to learn to throw on the rollouts, and his unpredictability became a real asset as the season went forward.
Did he take over was it Tom Clements or Conridge Holloway? Because I know Holloway joined the Argos in 81.
Holloway, yeah, that's right. But he didn't necessarily take over. In fact, he came to camp at the beginning of the year in 81, and they had it, I believe it was at Trent University in Peterborough, and he was there for a day. And then he said, I got to go back to Oklahoma. I got to go back to my business. He ran a business in Oklahoma, which it cleansed and cleaned soil that had been used for oil wells. And it was, that's what his job was. That's what his company did. And that's what he was going to do. And he was also being considered for color commentary for ABC Sports for their football coverage. So he left training camp. and went back to Oklahoma. And it was about 3 or 4 weeks into the season. He watched a game between Ottawa and Montreal. And Montreal had a bunch of guys, high-priced guys that year, that had been basically bought by Nelson Scalabania, who bought the team at the beginning of '81. Keith Gary, David Overstreet, Tom Cousineau was a linebacker, was a first-round pick in the NFL, came north instead. They just had a whole – Billy White Shoes Johnson was there. James Scott was a wide receiver. And, of course, at quarterback, they had the guy that brought the Los Angeles Rams to the Super Bowl in the end of '79 against Pittsburgh. And Vince Ferragamo, I was blanking on his name for a second, but Vince Ferragamo at quarterback. Scalabania figured that by spending big money on all these guys, and it was big money compared to other CFL teams, that he could buy a championship and finally defeat the Edmonton Eskimos. But as it turned out, the Alouettes ended up turning to Ken Johnson about 2/3 of the way through the season, and he became their quarterback after that, CFL veteran or CFL experienced guy anyway. And he took over from Ferragamo and basically helped the Alouettes almost get to the Eastern Final. But we'll talk about that later.
By the way, one of my friends who put me in touch with the Argos when I started doing freelance media coverage of them 4 years ago, he's been on my show a number of times, and he's been a big help. Mike Hogan, can you just tell us a little bit about your relationship with Mike Hogan?
Well, I met Hoagie. He worked in Ottawa. He's from Kingston originally. Went to high school with at least one of the guys from the Tragically Hip, but came to Ottawa to work here, and then went to Toronto afterwards. And you've had him on your show. I've had him on my show, the Sports Lunatics Show. Just a great, great guy. And like so many other guys in the CFL, so accessible and so easy to talk to. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love the CFL, because it feels like all of us who love the league and love Canadian football are on this one little island together. And we're all doing whatever we can to promote the league and try to, make sure the league succeeds and is still alive when we're not. And Hoagie's one of those guys. He's just a great, great guy. He works for the Argos, but I know he loves the league as well.
He's been doing their games now for 15 years, and I grew up back in the 70s. Unfortunately, the CFL had the blackout rule in the 70s and early 80s. So a lot of my Argos experience early growing up was listening to the radio on CFRB 1010 with either Dave Hodge or Bob Bertina, along with the late Pete Martin. And by the way, before Pete Martin passed away recently, I was able to meet him a couple years ago at the Argos 150th celebration. I had my photo with him, and I told him how much he meant to me growing up as an Argo fan. And I was even going to have him on my show, but unfortunately, it didn't work out with his health, and he passed away. And the Argonauts alumni just did a Peter Martin Memorial Golf Tournament for him as well. And I'm thankful I had the pleasure of meeting him, and he was the voice of the Argos radio broadcast for many years alongside a number of play-by-play guys.
In one of my previous books, I wrote a long chapter on the 71 Argos, and Peter Martin hosted the 40th anniversary barbecue for all the guys, and a lot of them came back to Toronto for that barbecue. One of the people that came back was Leo Cahill. He was still alive at the time, and he told some amazing stories about how he attracted certain players like Leon McQuay and Joe Theismann to the Argos back then. And it was all very, very, really, really compelling stuff, really interesting stuff.
Just like I had the pleasure of talking to Mike McCarthy, the former Hamilton Tiger Cats executive, Toronto Argonauts executive, and he was part of the 91 Argos team with McNall, Candy, and Wayne Gretzky, and bringing Rocket Ismail and bringing a Hollywood circus type atmosphere to Toronto in 91 as well. And just being able to deal with John Candy too.
Oh, yeah, incredible. Just had to be incredible. And I believe, I'll tell you this, Chris, I believe that the CFL would be well inclined to put a really strong team or have a really strong team in Toronto with a coach that was similar to what Leo Cahill was back then, kind of brash, cocky, get in people's faces, make the rest of the league hate Toronto. And so, because back then when Toronto would go to different cities in the CFL, fans would show up to hate watch them, even though the Argos were really good in 1971, went to the Grey Cup that year. And of course, lost a heartbreaker to the Calgary Stampeders on that Leon McQuay fumble with very little time remaining.
They did have a coach in the 90s where people did not like him. And the 96-97 Argos, who won back-to-back Grey Cups under Doug Flutie and Pinball Clements, Don Matthews, but I don't think he was hated to the degree of Leo Kay.
No, I don't think so either. He coached in every CFL city almost, I think.
Pretty well.
Even some of the American ones when they had the American experiment in the 90s.
Got to ask you this since I have you on, Howie, and I had Peter Adelakelski, the former Hamilton Tiger Cats offensive lineman, on my show a week ago, and he's been very vocal about all the changes to the CFL. Howie, since you've been a lifelong CFL fan and you've covered the team as media, what are your thoughts on all these CFL changes going forward in 2026 and 2027?
I'm a person who doesn't mind waiting and seeing, but I just there's some of these things that I have issues with, and one of them is that we don't have any kind of long-term plan. What's the long-term objective of these rule changes? What's the long-term objective? Because Stuart Johnson said there's going to be more. This is not just going to end with what he described or what he's going to be bringing in next year. There's going to be more. And so what is the more? And another thing too, it seemed like with Nathan Rourke's comments that after the rule changes were announced, that no players were involved in consultation with these changes. And so why were players not involved with this? There are a bunch of things that I haven't been able to get questions answered on. And I mean, I guess I can live with the 15-yard end zone because a lot of touchdowns are guys running over the goal line anyway, but moving the goalposts back to the end line instead of the goal line, that's going to mean that there aren't going to be any long missed field goals run back for a touchdown anymore. And I really don't like losing the 55-yard line. Glenn Suter talked about pillars of the Canadian Football League and Canadian football period. 12-man roster, 65-yard wide field. The last 3 minutes of a game, the Canadian player content, and one of them for me is the 55-yard line, and having a 55-yard line, and that's going to be taken out, and it's going to be a 100-yard field instead of a 110-yard field. And I just can't understand why. The first thing that came to me when he said that, as I was watching the press conference, was, are they trying to make the field smaller so that it fits better in American facilities? Because you can remember during the American experiment in the 90s, trying to fit a Canadian field into those facilities in the States was almost a gong show. And so I'm wondering, are they doing this to try to think about U.S. expansion in the future and fit it into those facilities more easily? That's the only thing that got me. And so those are my concerns, and those are I'm not a guy that's going to go screaming at everybody that I see on Twitter that disagrees with me, but those are my feelings about all the rule changes.
My one concern is every league that's tried to emulate the NFL has failed. And I have a lot of friends in the States that like the CFL for what it is. They enjoy the differences of the NFL. And even Chris Cuthbert was on a podcast. He doesn't think they're going to sell one extra ticket. Now, I did get to speak to Stuart Johnson on the field the other day. He was very approachable. He seems like a nice man, and I did get to ask him questions. The one I answered, but he didn't really give me an answer on, was what is going to happen to the universities and high schools in Canada too? Are they going to be having to force to change all their rules as well as the CFL?
Last weekend in Ottawa, we had the annual Panda game between Carleton University and Ottawa U, or University of Ottawa. Sorry, I have to say it that way because I've been told Ottawa U is a paper factory in Kansas, but the University of Ottawa and Carleton. And with the field changed the way that it is, does that mean that we can't have the Panda game the way it was, because it'll be different from every other university or U Sports game that's being played up to that point? It'll be a shorter field, and will they have to go play it at Carleton or at Ottawa U? And if they do that, they're going to lose a lot of money that they get, from everybody buying tickets. They filled that Lansdowne Park, 26,000 people there for that game. And so they're going to lose that if that's the case, if what you asked him is the case.
One of the rules I don't like is going from the 20-second play clock to the 35-second. Because I said to the commissioner, I said, one thing I like about the CFL, the NFL, when you're down to 3 minutes or 2 minutes, you're out of timeouts. You're pretty well cooked unless you have the ball. The CFL, it goes right down to the last second. And I don't know why they felt the need to change it from 20 to 35 seconds. And I agree with you on the 55-yard line. I'm okay with the end zones being cut down to 15 yards from 20. They're still bigger than the NFL end zones. The goalposts, they're saying it's a safety factor. I haven't seen too many guys get hurt on the running into a goalpost, and I haven't seen too many games decided on a throw that hit the goalpost. So to me, I really do feel they're trying to Americanize the game. I don't know if this is going to sell more tickets. It's already alienating a lot of long-time CFL season ticket holders.
When I was younger, Chris, I can remember running a post pattern and running right into the goalpost and knocking myself out. But that's don't gauge that by me. Don't gauge that by me.
For me, and I know the NFL, they moved theirs back in 1978 because theirs were originally like our CFLs, but it's just the CFL is uniquely Canada, and to me it sounds like they're trying to make it more NFL-ish. And I know the owners of the Argos, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, they partnered up with the Buffalo Bills. Well, when they partner up with the Bills, it's talking about promoting the Bills and football in Ontario. But are they going to have like a Toronto Argonauts day at a Bills game? And when they did have the game here, more people came out to see Jim Kelly and Doug Flutie than the Argos and Tiger Cats. So I don't know if this partnership long term is going to help the Argonauts or not.
We remember when the Argos and Skydome partnered with the Bills for those games that were in Toronto, and they had to give tickets away because nobody was buying them. I mean, they were outrageously expensive, but I mean, I didn't go to any of those games. I was living in the GTA at the time, but I didn't go to any of those games. But as I said, it's all a wait and see thing, and we'll have to wait and see. I cringe though at the thought of anything changing much further than it has.
This is just my opinion, Howie. It's funny how the Argos and MLSE partner up with the Bills, and then within a week or 2 weeks later, all these changes come about. I'm wondering if these changes weren't encouraged by Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, who has invested a lot of money into keeping the Toronto Argonauts afloat.
I try to have some faith. They didn't just come up with these rules or rule changes randomly in a couple of days. I'm sure that they were talking about this over a period of weeks and if not months. So I'm going to hope with my best heart that's not the case.
I do agree with you on this thing. These changes, they really should have talked to the owner. I guess the owners knew about this, but the GMs and the coaches and the players should have really kind of had some kind of input on this as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And the fact that Nathan Rourke was so surprised and was so put off by the rule changes. I was going to say upset. I don't know how upset he was, but I know he was put off. And so you could tell just in his voice how put off he was by them. And I think he called them garbage as well.
I don't know. This is going to affect the kicking game, and it's also going to affect the offenses as well. And we'll see. I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I'm trying to get people's opinions on both sides on the football on here as well. It's just a lot of my American friends are like, "Why are you guys making these changes?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just covering the league and stuff like that." But the goalpost, you know what? You bring up a point too. Maybe that's not a bad thing, but I will miss field goals being returned for touchdowns or 50-yard lines.
I can think of a bunch of them right off the top of my head. Derek Sluka had one for the Argos against Ottawa. I mean, I was there in the building for that one. Yeah. And then I was there a couple of weeks ago to see Trey Vavel take one back for Winnipeg. Khalil Pimpleton for Ottawa's done it as well in a game. When we saw a game, I think it was Saskatchewan and Toronto on a Friday or Saturday night, and somebody ran one back in that game as well. And I mean, there's nothing better than to see that, unless it's happening against your team, and it's happening against my team, the Ottawa Red Blacks, a couple of times this year.
I was able to ask Stuart Johnson. I said, I love special teams, and I said I don't really care for what they've done to them in the National Football League with the dynamic kickoff rule. And he said as of now, there's no plans on changing how kickoffs and punts are all done, because to me, special teams and returns are one of the most exciting plays in football.
Well, touch wood, it doesn't happen in the CFL. I mean, but given what we've seen so far this year with rule changes and rule amendments, who knows what's on the table and what's not on the table?
They still have to figure out what they're going to do with the 35-second play clock when they get down to 3 minutes. That's what I was told. So I just don't want to see games end with 3 minutes left. I like the way these games end up with no time left. Just the way it is.
I think it was Glenn Suter who said it would be dreadful if with a minute and a half left, and the other team with no timeouts, if somebody just kneeled down with the ball for 3 straight plays and ran out the clock that way. I'd hate that.
That's what happened last night with the Giants-Eagles game.
Yeah.
It was over 2 minutes left. All they did with the Giants was victory formation, and I was like, I didn't even watch it. So which change are you okay with the most, and which one do you kind of really disagree with the most?
I think the one I'm okay with the most is shortening the end zones. I'm okay with that.
The 15, okay.
Yeah, 15 yards is still fairly deep. It's not, I mean, they used to be 25 when I was a kid, and then they were 20, and now they're 15. But and I really, I'm most confounded by getting rid of the 25 or the 55-yard line.
Howie, since you're out of Ottawa, what is the mood of the area about these changes from the Red Blacks fan base, and what's the mood of the fan base right now towards this franchise, who are 4-11 and going to miss the playoffs after having high expectations early in the year?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and I've written this numerous times. All the fan base wants here in Ottawa is hope. Give us hope. You don't have to win every game. Just give us hope. Make us feel like we can go to the game and maybe hope for a win, maybe expect a win. But when they get down, a touchdown, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter every time, shoot themselves in the foot every time, it makes things really, really difficult. And I know there are a lot of Ottawa fans here, football fans in Ottawa here, who my uncle he's been a season ticket holder forever. He stopped going to the games. He wasn't at the Winnipeg game when we were all there. But to see old faithful fans like my uncle not going to the games, it really is a statement about where a lot of fans are in this city.
Do you see this franchise possibly ending up like the Rough Riders, or do you find this ownership's not going to allow it to happen to what happened with the Renegades and the Rough Riders?
The organization has so much invested in what's around the stadium that I can't see them ever being in the position that the ownership group was in '96, where they don't have money to keep the team going. I just can't see that happening. And now, I mean, I could be wrong, and I mean, I just don't think that it's ever going to happen the way it happened in '96.
What's your thoughts on the stadium situation? Did they do enough to renovate that stadium?
Well, the renovations are still to come, and I think that's going to be pretty sad to have happen, because the north side stands are going to be unusable for at least a year, if not more, and that is really disheartening to a lot of fans. There's a roof on the north side stands. When the new configuration is built, there's not going to be a roof on the north side, and a lot of people that are on the north side are older people who have been there for a long time and like that roof, and they love that roof, especially on days. And if you take a look in the '81 season at my book, there were a lot of ugly days, rainy days back then, snowy days too, and that roof came in handy a lot of the times.
When are they going to start these renovations, and is Ottawa going to bid for a Grey Cup in the next couple of years?
Oh, they won't be able to get it until the stadium's rebuilt or reconfigured. That's for sure. It's not going to happen. They're not going to get it next year. I believe next year's has already been awarded, and I think that's when the reconstruction is going to begin. Because don't forget, under the north side stands there, the Civic Center is there where the ice is, and that ice surface is going to be moved to another area beyond the east end zone, and it's going to be a smaller capacity arena for the 67s there at that point. It's going to be really weird because the Civic Center was put in there in 1967. I was 7 years old. And for that to be changed, for that to be different, it's going to be really strange. I grew up with that arena. And I remember when I was a kid in Cubs at the time, we had a kind of a kids jamboree or something in there. We put on sketches and skits and things. And I remember being in the bowels of the arena as a kid as a 7-year-old and thinking, this is really cool. I didn't know this was in an arena, but it's to have it all change as drastically as it's going to be changed. It's going to be very, very different. It's going to be almost like going to a new city or a new arena.
I wanted to ask you this too. Montreal is a great CFL city. Montreal's renovating Olympic Stadium. Is there any chance that the Alouettes could move back into the Big O, or they could possibly have a Grey Cup again in Montreal, which I don't think they've had one in Montreal since 2008 at least?
That's a good question. I don't know how long any renovation of that building is going to take, because if they could get it done quickly, they might be able to get a baseball team, and that's not happening anytime soon, according to everybody that seems to know. And so I don't see the Alouettes moving into the Big O at any time soon. That's just from the information that I have at my fingertips right now.
Before we get into your book, Howie, the Senators' new arena, have they already started to work on it, the groundwork on it yet?
No, that's going to be, I told you before the show, I'm 65 years old, and the inertia that exists with the National Capital Commission that owns the land and the way things go with the different municipal bodies in Ottawa, I don't anticipate being able to see a game there in my lifetime. I'm just saying that. I don't. That means it's going to be a long time. I think, in my own opinion, it's going to be a long time before anything gets started and gets finished there.
One of my friends who's watching our show right now on Instagram Live, he is a longtime public address announcer for the St. Louis Blues, Tom Cahoon. He's I don't think he's missed a game since 1987 taking over the Blues. So I want to say hi to Tom Cahoon, and maybe one day you can have him on your show. And Tom has his own show called the St. Louis Blues Legends Podcast as well.
I want to give a shout out to a friend of mine who I used to work with back in sports radio in Ottawa in the 90s, Mike Ross, who is the public address announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs now. Rossi, if you're listening, hi.
He's a friend of mine. He's a season ticket holder of the Argonauts, and I've had him on my show, and he has that perfect voice for radio or being the Toronto Maple Leafs PA announcer. And the Leafs have only had, 3 in their history? Paul Morris, Andy Frost, and Mike Ross, to my knowledge.
Well, yeah, and Rossi, having smoked cigars and drank beers with him on his back deck, if you get him on, and I'm sure he can tell you a million stories. He wrote the foreword for my first book, Crazy Days and Wild Nights, and he told a story about a few beers and cigars underneath the stands at the Civic Center one night with a few prominent people that everybody would know. And it's in the foreword for that book. And when I read it, when he sent it to me and I read it, it brought a tear to my eye and a smile to my face while I was reading it. It took me back 25 years in a heartbeat. It was awesome. And so, yeah, that's my first book, Crazy Days and Wild Nights. It's worth it just for the foreword, for Rossi's foreword. It's awesome.
And I've had a lot of public address announcers on my show, and they all have great stories, unique stories. And maybe one day your next book will be about not just Mike Ross, but public address announcers, because people don't realize when you come into a ballpark or a stadium, that's the first voice you hear.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, you're pitching another idea to me, Chris. I've had so many different ideas pitched to me over the last a couple of years, and I'll put that one in the file with the others.
And the thing about Mike Ross and a lot of these PA guys, they're down to earth, they're approachable, they'll talk to you, and they're passionate about what they do.
Yeah, Rossi and his wife Natalie are like family to me.
Well, like I said, I always like seeing Mike, and I told Mike I'm a Red Wings fan, but I really hope the Leafs do well. And since we're talking about the Leafs before we get to your book, just thoughts on Joe Bowen's final year as the Leafs radio play-by-play announcer.
It saddened me a couple of years ago because the MLSE stopped sending Joe Bowen and Jim Ralph on the road with the team, and you could tell on the radio broadcasts that they were doing it from a monitor, and I hate to see that happen. It's happening now in Ottawa too, where Dean Brown and Gord Wilson are not going on the road with the teams to do their games live. They're doing them from monitors in a studio, and I think that takes away something. It takes away from the fans' experience listening to the games on the radio, because it leads to inadvertent mistakes that the guys make, and it's not their fault. And I don't like that fact at all. Joe Bowen and Jim Ralph together are an institution. Joe Bowen has been around for how many years? I mean, we're talking 40 years almost, if not
43 years.
Wow, there you go.
Years.
Yeah, there you go. I can remember
Since
him
82.
doing. I can remember him doing games in the 80s when my brother was on radio in Ottawa, and he did a tape for my brother, including him in a broadcast, in a kind of made up hockey broadcast. But yeah, Joe Bowen, he sounds like a salt of the earth guy. I've never met him, but he sounds like a salt of the earth guy on the radio, and he's going to be missed after this year for sure.
I had the pleasure of meeting him through his son, Sean Bowen, who works for the Toronto Argonauts. And Joe shook my hand. He was down to earth. I got to talk to him. He has a book coming out, I guess, after this final year, his 44th or 45th year. He has a book coming out, and he loves his Notre Dame football. And I was very lucky to meet him. And his son, Sean, is the in-game host for the Argonauts. And he also does behind the scenes media work for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he does a really great job. And Sean is really humble, and sometimes you meet people and you're thinking, oh, they're going to have an ego or an attitude or whatever, and they're the most down to earth people and stuff like that.
Sudbury goalies, they're Sudbury goalies.
Absolutely. And Joe did the Sudbury Wolves games in the OHL, and I think he did some Nova Scotia games in the AHL too, I believe.
I don't remember that. I don't know that, but okay. I know he was a Sudbury guy, and I know that he talks about Sudbury all the time too.
So, all right, Howie, we're going to get into your book. Can you tell my audience about your latest book, your fourth one? Congratulations. This one is entitled An Unlikely Story, How the 81 Ottawa Rough Riders Just Missed a Miracle. How this come about?
Oh, it's like everything else. You come upon things, or you talk to some people and you get ideas, and then you think about in your head, could this be the germ of an idea that I can write a story about? And I did a long interview with Pat Stokwa in 2022 on the Sports Lunatics Show. Pat Stokwa was a slot receiver for that Rough Rider team in 81. He joined the team in the late 70s, early 80s, and then played a few years with Ottawa. Was not one of those flashy guys, but he was one of those guys that was he had to block guys, block linebackers, block linemen, block DBs, block the runners coming in, or the rushers coming in. He could catch passes out of the slot. He could do a lot of things, and he would do them happily. He would get his uniform dirty if it helped somebody else make a play. But that interview, which was about an hour, maybe a little over an hour long, was kind of the skeleton for this whole book. And after I talked with Pat, and I started doing research about the season, I thought I could get it done in about 3,500 words. And I started writing, and I started writing, and I started writing, and I started writing. And I had this book done probably a couple of years ago, but I never did anything with it. It was in my laptop, and it just kind of sat there for a while. And then I thought to myself, after my third book, The Consequences of Chance, came out, I started looking at this book, the manuscript again. And I realized there's some stuff here, but I need more stuff. And I would go back and I went through the season again, and I found more information, things that I hadn't picked up the first time through. And so it's been a few years in the making, but I saw a review yesterday in the newsletter for the Ottawa chapter of the CFL Alumni Association, and the review was just so generous, so wonderful. I felt humbled by all the kind words in it, and it's I don't know if it's up yet, but I just some of the things they talked about, different aspects of the book and the detail of the book, and the stories about individuals in the book like J.C. Watts and Tony Gabriel and Calvin Kirk, who was a receiver on that team, and Rick Sovieta, who was a linebacker on that team, and Greg Marshall. Yeah, Greg Marshall as well. Little stories about the individuals, and in the epilogue, there are more stories about Larry Brune and Val Belcher and George Brancato and a lot of the guys, the key players, the key people involved with that team. And I ended up doing about 80,000 words in this book, and I probably could have doubled that if I really wanted to, but I didn't want everything. I didn't want superfluous stuff in the book. It's a chronicle basically of the team from the time that they started trying to woo J.C. Watts to come to Ottawa. And J.C. Watts was not the cure-all that he became at the end of the season, at the beginning of the season. He came from primarily a running offense in Oklahoma, didn't really know how to throw out of the pocket. He didn't really throw a lot of passes. I think he said that at one point, the most passes he had ever thrown in a game that in his life was like about 18. And so coming to Canada, playing in the CFL, 3 downs, and you got to get a first down, you got to throw the ball. And he had to learn how to do that, how to spot receivers that were open, how to do all the things that a quarterback has to do to acclimate themselves to the Canadian game, because it's not easy for Americans to come up here. People think, oh, it's the CFL. It's a subpar product. It's not a subpar product. It's a different product, and it's a different game. And the physical requirements from each player are different from position to position. Greg Marshall, you mentioned him a second ago. His first year was 1980 with Ottawa. And he came into camp at about 250 and played that year at about 250, 255. He lost 15 to 20 pounds for his second year because he knew with the wider field, you have a lot more room to cover, especially when a running back is faster and can turn the corner. And that less 15 pounds, it made him a better player. And he became an all-star in 81 than he wasn't in 80. He really became a force through the course of that year. It was a rough period. That whole season was kind of rough, the first 2/3 of it. And I've described it to people as kind of like a Russian novel. There's a lot of downs and a lot of downs, and then a few ups, and then more downs and more downs and more downs. And then things start to pick up again. And, they beat Montreal in the East semi. They shock Hamilton in the East final. Because Hamilton was, I think, a 12.5-point favorite in that game, or 13-point favorite in that game. And Ottawa beat them 14-10. But then you get to the Grey Cup, and we all kind of know what happened in the Grey Cup. But the fact that the last kind of third of the season, that starting at Thanksgiving, that game that I mentioned earlier, Edmonton beat Ottawa 24-6 with 2 defensive touchdowns. So it was a lot closer game than had been expected or had been thought of between Edmonton and Ottawa. And so shoring up that position of quarterback, acclimating J.C. Watts to the position, to the Canadian game, shoring up the defensive secondary, getting guys in the defensive backfield who could play, Carl Brazeley, and other guys, Randy Rhino, Larry Brune, a whole bunch of different guys who could either cover or rush, depending on what you wanted them to do, and shoring up that defensive secondary. It went a long way to creating the scenario that existed with Ottawa in the Grey Cup against the juggernaut Edmonton Eskimos in Montreal.
Do you think we'll ever see a 5-11 team do what Ottawa did?
No.
No.
It'll never happen because of the crossover now. And the impetus for the crossover was the 5-11 Ottawa Rough Riders in that season getting into the playoffs. The week of the Grey Cup, the Monday, I believe it was, all of the GMs, all of the governors got together. Norm Kimball in Edmonton was saying, this is a travesty that the 5-11 Ottawa Rough Riders, I think every team in the West had a better record than Ottawa. Not just the top teams, but even the bottom teams in the West, and said this is a travesty that a team like Ottawa, 5-11, gets to play in the Grey Cup. But Greg Marshall's answer to that was 5-11. How about 2-0? Because we beat Montreal, we beat Hamilton. We're 2-0.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but that whole season with the East teams the way they were, that was the impetus for the crossover that ended up coming in 97. It all started with discussions in 81.
Howie, what game specifically did any of the players mention that kind of saw the light turn on for them in that season?
Universally, almost, it's the Thanksgiving game in Edmonton where they lost 24-6. J.C. Watts looked like a Canadian Football League quarterback in that game. If they hadn't given up those 2 defensive touchdowns, it would have been 10-6 instead of 24-6. The defense was playing a lot better. It wasn't the defense that gave up the points in that game. It was actually the offense. But that's the game that everybody pointed to. When they came back from Hamilton after the East semifinal and arrived at the airport, first of all, the airport was packed. The mayors of the different cities, it wasn't just Ottawa. There was Orleans, there was Vanier, there was Gloucester, there was Nepean. And the mayor of Nepean, to tell you what a small town Ottawa is, and there's over 1 million people here now, but to tell you what a small town Ottawa still is, especially in the sporting community, the mayor of Nepean, Ben Franklin, was at that airport that day, and he talked to a reporter from the Ottawa Citizen and said, we could see the light come on in that Thanksgiving game against Edmonton. He said that, and it was universally figured as people look back that Edmonton game was the game where the switch got turned on and Ottawa became the team that wasn't 5-11, but was 2-0. Now, Ben Franklin, I was going to say, he was my geography teacher in high school. And as mayor of Nepean at the same time, he often stepped out and we had to watch a lot of movies while we were in that geography class. And as you know, when you're 10 or when you're in grade 10, you're 15 years old, 11, you're 16 years old. You really enjoy watching movies a lot more than really listening to the teacher talk anyway.
What was the biggest challenging writing in this book, and how many former players and coaches were you able to talk to, and were you able to speak to Bob Obilovich as well about that team?
I didn't talk to Bob Obilovich, but what I did, the obstacle basically, I think, was my own belief in being able to write a book about football, because I didn't really play a lot of football as a kid. I played hockey, I played baseball, and I played baseball at a reasonable level. I played hockey, with a lot of guys that were very good. But I never played football. And my concern was, are football people going to accept this? Are they going to read it and think well of it? And that was my biggest concern. I gave it to my uncle to read after I first wrote it back, in probably 2022 or 2023. To take a look at this manuscript and tell me what you think. And he did not like it. And the fact that I think that his reaction was the first reaction that I got. And it hurt my confidence in writing this book. And I think that is the biggest hurdle that I had in writing it. I had interviews with players. I didn't get to talk to Bob Obilovich, but I did talk to old players from that team. I've had conversations with different guys from that team over the years as well, and I could remember them vividly. Rick Sovieta was a linebacker for the Rough Riders. He passed away, I think it was in 2017, from pancreatic cancer. But just the nicest man you could ever meet. As I said, most Canadian football guys are just wonderful people, and Rick was one of those wonderful people. But I got to host his Super Bowl parties and his Grey Cup parties because he had a restaurant and a bar not far from where I'm living right now. And we're in there one day, I think it was for a Super Bowl. And I said, Rick, tell me about that interception that you got in that game off of Warren Moon. And he said to me, Howie, I got lucky. He says, Moon threw it so hard that it stuck in my face mask, and I just had to grab it and hold on to it. And I've watched the game. I'm sure you've watched the game over and over and over again because it's on YouTube and you can watch it anywhere, anytime. He made a great play on that interception. He drifted into the passing lane. Moon didn't see him probably until he'd let the ball go. Rick got his hands up, all taped up and everything like that. No, you can't even get a grip on anything with all the tape. Put his hands up, blocked the ball in the air. It hung there for a second. He got his hands underneath it, held on to it, ran a couple of yards, and then went down to keep possession. And it was a great play on his part. And Rick was a great athlete. You'd meet him, and you wouldn't think he was ever a football player. He looked more like an accountant than a football player. But, you get the pads on and everything like that. And he was a great football player. He was a great athlete. And other members of that team, his teammates, said the same thing, that he was a great athlete and he made a great play on that interception. But, little stories from the players that I talked to, the conversations that I've had with people over the years, and even things that I picked up by going through old newspapers. It was all not an education, because I remember that game pretty vividly, but it was almost like a re-education, because I picked up on little things, especially the instability because of injuries through the whole season for that team. George Brancato and the assistant coaches trying to put lineups together week after week after week. They never had the same lineup in a game until the last game of the regular season and the first game of the playoffs. That was the first time all year that they were able to get the same lineup in back to back. And in football, playing once a week, continuity is so important. Continuity in personnel, continuity in coaches, continuity in just playing with the same guys. Their tendencies and learning that. When you don't know the tendencies of the guy beside you, you can't really play naturally. You have to play and think all the time. And when you can't just react and you have to kind of look and think, it slows you down a half second. That half second can be the difference between winning and losing. And there was a lot of losing for the Ottawa Rough Riders in the first 2/3 of the season.
Howie, I know next year will be the 45th year, and I know they didn't win the Grey Cup that year, but do you feel the Ottawa Red Blacks will honor that team from 45 years ago in the 2026 season?
I think they could. They've been very good about honoring the past. This Red Blacks organization has done that numerous times for numerous iterations of the Ottawa Rough Riders in the past. And they've had different year teams back to honor them and have them on the field. And to see the old Rough Rider jerseys again every time they come out, the old players come out, I really hope they do. I believe, as I said to you before the show, a lot of the guys are getting older now, and some of them aren't with us anymore. And I really hope that next year the organization steps up and honors the 81 Rough Rider team, because to me, that was the last great time to be a Rough Rider fan. They did finish 500 a couple of seasons afterwards, but they didn't win a playoff game that year. And so as we all know, in 96, the team folded. They went through a couple of different groups of ownerships, and then we didn't have football in Ottawa from 97 to till the Renegades came back in 2002. And they were only around for the blink of an eye. And then the Red Blacks came back in 2014. And I was living in the GTA then. I picked up my son, and we drove to Ottawa. And we came to that game, that inaugural game for the Red Blacks. And it was so cool because my son, my son always asked me, about people I met in media and people I knew. And he said, Dad, there's James Duthie down there. And he says, do you know him? I said, actually, I do. We hung around in the same circles back in the 80s, the same high school people and everything like that. So I got to know James, back way before he ever got onto television. Then he got into see what was CJOH then. Now it's CTV Ottawa, but then he went to Toronto, and he's done so well for himself. His father used to work with my mother when they worked at the RCMP headquarters here in Ottawa, And my mom says, I used to type up his hockey schedules. His father would give them to me and say, can you type this up for me? I'd type up Jamie Duthie's hockey schedules. And so this is just an idea of what a small town the sporting community in Ottawa is, because, everybody kind of knows each other. And if you don't know somebody in the circle of people, then you know somebody that knows them. And it's this is one of the reasons I love Ottawa. And I was talking with Warner Miles, who played for the Argos in '81. And he gave me a couple of little stories for the book as well about, the players in Toronto and the way that the Argos organization was that year. And then the year after with Bob Obilovich for the epilogue. But Warner is just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And we get to talking and we find out we know this person in common. We have this person in common. And this is like, and I say to him, this is Ottawa. This is Ottawa, because you and I can talk to each other and we all have these people that we know in common. And it's a wonderful place and it's a wonderful thing. And Ottawa's a big city now, but it's still got that small town feel.
I've never been to Ottawa, and to be honest, I need to get there. I've been to more of the states than my own country, so
Wow.
I would like to get out to Ottawa and Western Canada as well, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. Howie, since I still have you on here and you got a little more time, I wanted to get back, ask you another question about that '81 Grey Cup. I was 9 years old at the time, and I was at a friend's house in Kitchener watching the game, and we were all shocked that Ottawa was up 20-1, thinking this is the greatest upset of all time. What changed in the second half of that Grey Cup game in Montreal? What was the big turning point for the Eskimos in that second half where they outscored Ottawa, I think 25-3 in the second half?
Go back. I mean, and I'll give you an answer, but go back through wherever you get your podcasts and scroll down and listen to the show that I did with Pat Stokwa. And he talks about that. I said to him, what was the mood like in the room at halftime? Because, it was, you guys were expected to get just trounced in this game. And what was the mood like? He says, Howie, we were in uncharted waters. We didn't know what to think and what to feel. And I think personally, the thing that hurt them was the break, was the sitting there and having to think in their heads about this and not being able to play freely, but just thinking we're ahead in this game. I don't know if they relaxed. I don't think they did. I mean, there were a couple of little mistakes that happened in the second half that led to Edmonton points, but it wasn't anything that Ottawa did more than I think it was something that wasn't something that Ottawa did more than it was something that Edmonton did. Because you remember in the first half, Ottawa was doing their best to guard against the long pass. They did not want the speedy Edmonton receivers to get open, and so Brazeley was back there, Jerome Stanton was back there, and they had these guys in a blanket. Warren Moon was unfamiliar with not having guys open deep, and so he didn't really think about going short, taking what Ottawa's defense was giving him. They pulled Warren Moon out, put Tom Wilkinson in. The superannuated Tom Wilkinson. And Wilkinson just did what came naturally to him. I think he was like 40 years old at the time, or he looked like he was 65, but he wasn't. But he saw what Ottawa was giving him. He dumped the short passes off and gained yards through that. And it was then that they were able to start sustaining drives. They only got a single point in that half, but it showed Hugh Campbell and it showed Warren Moon the formula for success against this Ottawa defense, because Ottawa's defense was just having just a whale of a game in that first half. The Wilkinson, Moon, and Campbell huddled up in the room with the three of them, and Hugh Campbell stressed to Warren Moon how important it was for him to start throwing passes short. They're not giving us anything deep. They're not giving anything in the middle. Start throwing short passes and move the ball down gradually instead of in one big chunk. And that's what Edmonton did, and that's what led them to success in the second half. It wasn't that Ottawa lost the game, it was that Edmonton won it.
Howie, in all your years, would you consider this Grey Cup, the '81 Grey Cup, Ottawa was the underdog by 22.5, is the biggest point spread in in the Grey Cup history. I don't ever remember another team. I know the Argos have had some teams that were heavy underdogs, but not to that degree of 22.5 points.
Just off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I thought you were going to ask me if it's the greatest Grey Cup game that you've ever seen, but I think that one was the Saskatchewan-Hamilton game in '89, which was unbelievable. But I mean, there are a lot of great Grey Cup games. You can go back through history, and there are a lot of amazing Grey Cup games. I was on a podcast in Saskatchewan the other night, and they were talking about the game against Montreal with the 13th man on the field and having to re-kick the field goal. And that one was a heartbreaker for Saskatchewan fans. And anyway, I don't think there was a bigger point spread. I don't think that there was ever there's never been a team with a 5-11 record getting into the Grey Cup final. And in the book, I talk about the different people, different big football people, different celebrities in Canada who were asked, who do you think will win and by how many? And the spreads they gave were just, it was so overwhelmingly Edmonton Eskimos favored in that game. And as I said, I think we said it on the air. I don't think it was just in the room, but people looked at this game before it happened and thought it was going to be a whitewash for the Eskimos. They thought it would be a national embarrassment. People were worried that Edmonton was going to run up the score and win by 50 points. And so at halftime, when Ottawa ran off the field with a 20-1 lead, the fans in Olympic Stadium that day gave Ottawa a standing ovation. And there's a point in the book, too, where Edmonton, of course, was like the traveling kings coming into Montreal for that, came into the airport, flew in, fanfare, fans, media, flashbulbs, and everything like that. I think they still used flashbulbs back then, but Ottawa drove in on a bus, and there were like 3 or 4 people at the bus station when they arrived. And how familiar are you with Bugs Bunny?
Pretty familiar.
You remember the cartoon with the Crusher, the big wrestler with all the muscles and everything like that?
Yes, yeah.
And they bring in his opponent, Ravishing Ronald, and when Ravishing Ronald sees the Crusher with all his muscles, he gets freaked out and he runs away, leaving Bugs Bunny to fight the Crusher. The 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders were Bugs Bunny going into that game.
Was that Tony Gabriel's last Grey Cup? Was
Yes,
that
it
his
was.
last one?
Yes, it
1981.
was. Yeah.
Can you speak about how good he was?
He was playing at 60%. He tore ligaments in his knee in the Hamilton game in the semifinal, or in the Eastern final, sorry. And he was out there at about 60%. He didn't practice all week because he could barely walk at the beginning of the week. By the middle of the week, he was able to jog in a straight line, but he didn't do any cutting or stopping suddenly or anything like that. He was playing with a brace on his knee. He said, "I'm not worried about losing my speed because I don't have any speed to lose." And he was up against Gary Hayes for the most part in that game. And Stoker said about Gabriel that he's so tall and so he's got long arms and he can create separation from a 6-foot DB so easily because he's got the long arms. You can throw the ball out here and he can get it without being impeded. And so, he had a really good game that game, as injured as he was, and even out there. And you remember Terrell Davis in there was one of the Super Bowls Denver was in, and there was one point in the fourth quarter where he was just blinded with a migraine headache, and he couldn't even see. And they said, "We want you to go out anyway because you're better as a decoy than not being there." And so it was almost the same for Tony Gabriel. Now everybody knows, with about 3.5 minutes left in that fourth quarter, the double interference penalty between Gabriel and Hayes, never called before that, never called after that. It changed the complexion of the whole game because Gabriel had just caught a pass about midfield. They move the ball, get another first down. They're probably in shape to get another field goal, which would have given them a 6-point lead, I believe, at that point. And maybe it would have forced Edmonton into not getting a field goal to win the game, but getting a touchdown to win the game. Instead, the official throws the flag, calls interference on both guys. You have to replay the down from the original line of scrimmage, and it goes incomplete. Ottawa has to punt, and then Edmonton comes down and gets a tying field goal. They end up getting the winning field goal with 3 seconds left, and it's all part of history now. But that official, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want anybody to get mad at me or anything, but he was an esteemed guy in football circles. But he threw that flag. As I said, that call was never made before that. It was never called again after that. But he never worked a game on the field after that Grey Cup game. And I'm not sure if it was his choice. I'm not sure if it was the league's choice. He ended up getting kicked upstairs and eventually became a supervisor of officials.
And the Ottawa Rough Riders did get back to the East Final in '82 against the Argonauts, but that wasn't much of a game. The Argos really took it to them, I think, 44-26.
In a rain-soaked just
exhibition stadium.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Like Mark Hebscher calls it, used to call it on Sportsline, excruciation stadium.
I grew up with that stadium. I went to my first Argos game there. I went to my first Blue Jays game there.
Yeah.
And the Argos started getting good there. Thanks to Ottawa bringing over Bob Obilovich, Conridge Holloway, Martin Cox in Beckstead, Carl Brazeley, a number of guys Obi coached with in Ottawa. He brought over with him to the Argos in '82 with the run and shoot offense with Mouse Davis as well. And Exhibition Stadium, to me, was the glory years for the Argonauts. Even though they weren't very successful there, they only won their one Grey Cup there, and then they lost to Edmonton. I thought they could have beaten the Eskimos in the '82 Grey Cup, but I felt their inexperience and the weather in that second half of the '82 Grey Cup was a huge difference in that game as well.
Absolutely, it was. And Warner Miles, who played for those Argos in '81 and '82, told me a story about the training camp in that year with Obilovich as the coach. And Obilovich showed everybody the tape from that '81 Grey Cup, just to give everybody an idea of what it's like. And Warner said that the American players who were brand new to the CFL gained a lot of respect for, especially seeing Tony Gabriel out there limping around, seeing that. He gave the new American players who'd never played in the CFL before a lot of respect for the Canadian game and for Canadian players.
And the 1981 Toronto Argonauts, to me, were probably the worst team I've ever saw. As an Argo fan, they were 2-14. They went from 2-14 to 9-6, and that's what I love about the CFL. One year you can have a bad year and miss the playoffs, but if you have the right draft, the right free agent signings, a little bit of luck, and a good coaching staff, you can turn around your season quickly.
There's a Toronto team this year that's kind of like that. They were last place last year, and this year they're going into the championship series in their league. I think they're called the Blue Jays, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of the Blue Jays, what are your thoughts on them in the ALCS? I'm a Detroit Tigers fan.
I saw that little cartoon with you with the Tigers hat on.
Yes, I had. That's my logo. I'm hoping the Tigers can get by Seattle tonight. But this Blue Jays team, I interviewed a lot of these guys when they're down with the Buffalo Bisons, and I love AAA baseball. And I was going to ask you, Ottawa used to have a AAA team called the Ottawa Lynx. Just can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the Ottawa Lynx, and do you feel AAA baseball can come back to Canada at some point?
That was a boom time for AAA baseball in Canada. I mean, there were AAA teams all over the country. Calgary had a team. I think Edmonton had a team. There were teams in Vancouver. There were teams all over Canada. We had the Ottawa Lynx in Ottawa. I was the color commentator from 1993 to 1999. I left Ottawa in 2000 to go to Seattle through work. But I did the games there. And AAA as a level is a place where nobody wants to be. The old guys are going down. The new guys are coming up. Nobody wants to be at AAA. They all want to be up there with the big club. And I mean, I talked to players who had just been sent down by the Expos, who were the Lynx were the affiliate for the Expos in Ottawa, and they did not like being in Ottawa. They felt they deserved to be in Montreal. I remember Matt Stairs, the first '93, the first year the Lynx were in Ottawa, and I walked into the clubhouse. I'm meeting people for the first time, and Stairs looks at me with my cameraman and said, "Who the are you? And what do you want?" And I ended up getting interviews with other guys, but I didn't get one with Matt Stairs. But anyway, and that was not a reflection on him personally. That was a reflection on his feelings about being in Ottawa more than they were toward me personally. He didn't know who I was, but he didn't like being at AAA. He wanted to be up with the big club where he felt he deserved to be. And I mean, you look at his history and his time in the leagues, and he deserved to be in the majors, for his talent and for his ability. But yeah, I mean, Ottawa won a championship, an International League championship in '95. I was down on the field in an impromptu scrum with the manager, Pete McCannon. And, we got it on the field. I got one of the players. He was, I think, the third string catcher. And I said to Bert Heffernan, I said, Bert, this has to be a thrill. And he said, oh, yeah. He said the first F word, because we were simulcast on 1310 in Ottawa as well. And that was the first time the F word was ever used on 1310 in their numerous decades of existence. And it was my fault. But in the clubhouse, I got McCarvered with the beer and the champagne. And one of the players came up to me afterwards and says, "Are you okay with that? Because I'm not sure you were okay with that." I said, "I expected it. I changed out of my suit and changed into the clothing from my jeans and the jacket from the TV, so I wouldn't get my clothes ruined. It was their clothes that got ruined." But no, I mean, it was when they were winning at the beginning and with the in the happy times of the newness of the franchise and everything like that, the place was the place to be. After they won that championship in '95, it was like things started to go down. And by the time I left Ottawa in 2000, I think they were with Baltimore by then. They weren't with Montreal anymore, that may have happened later. I'm getting my years all mixed up. But anyway, the attendance started to peter out, and it's like I said before: give us hope, give us as fans hope, and we'll come out. And if the hope isn't there, the fans won't come out anymore. And so the Lynx ended up leaving when I was gone. I'd left Ottawa. I could have been in Toronto by then, but by the time they exited the city. But that's that. The Lynx it was a wonderful time. I felt like I lived at the stadium, because the games are every other day or every day. And, so yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful time, a wonderful place. And I know the corridors down there, like the back of my hand, or at least I used to.
As a Detroit Tiger fan, and covering the Buffalo Bisons, I don't think the Buffalo Bisons organization gets enough credit for the Blue Jays' success. 16 out of their 26 players, including Vladdy and Bo, played down in Buffalo. And I want to say a big thank you to a manager down in the Bisons who used to be the Expos second baseman, Casey Candell, who's done a great job getting these guys ready to come up to the big leagues. And I just think the Bisons organization needs a little more credit for what they've done with developing these players and getting them ready to go to the big leagues. Because I personally didn't think Davis Schneider or Ernie Clement were big league players. And obviously they've proven me and a lot of people wrong.
Well, they proved a lot of fans wrong in the Bronx, I can tell you that. But I mean, the Ottawa Rough Riders were my first sports love because they know Ottawa, that's all we had. The Expos didn't come around till '69. But you mentioned Casey Candell. He was one of those lunch pail guys, get his uniform dirty, Yeah. And those were my favorite players. Those kind of guys, they were my favorite players. I remember Ron Hunt, who played for the original Expos teams back in the 69, 70, 71. He set a record for getting hit by pitches more than anybody else. And so I loved Ron Hunt. He was my first baseball hero in Montreal. And when I played Little League, I'd choke up on the bat and I'd stand right over the plate and hope the ball hit me, thinking that I was being noble or something. I was just being stupid. But anyway, it's those Expos teams were awesome. And as you said, Buffalo, that stadium is wonderful, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And the Bisons were one of the first teams to give me media opportunities, and they treat you like family down there. They're a first-class organization, and I'm hoping one day to get back there. I had to pause my relationship due to the climate over there right now. I'll leave it at that. Hey, I have a comment for you too, Howie. I have a viewer watching. His name is George Brown. He's a friend of mine. He's a CFL fan, Argo fan in Missouri near St. Louis.
Wow.
He loves the CFL. He loves the Argos, and he wants to ask you, Howie, how close, in your opinion, are we? He's a Montreal sports fan too. With how close are I'm going to reword the question. How close are we to getting a Major League Baseball team back in Montreal? And what about the NBA as well?
Well, one of my friends is Danny Gallagher. He's written about 10 books on the Montreal Expos. You can get his books like you can get my books on Amazon. But read any of Danny's books. And if you follow Danny on Twitter, Danny is not very positive at all about getting a team in Montreal, a Major League Baseball team in Montreal anytime soon, because the stadium right now apparently is not safe for anyone to go in there, and they have to reconfigure the whole place and renovate the whole place so that it can be safe for people to go in there. You remember, it wasn't that, well, maybe it was that long ago, but pieces of cement were falling, and
Yep.
Thankfully nobody was in the stadium at the time that they were falling. But I don't think, according to Danny, that there's going to be baseball back in Montreal anytime soon. They've had the opportunity, certainly with the Oakland A's moving to Sacramento, or the Tampa Bay Rays moving into the Yankees minor league facility. They could have gone to Montreal if the Olympic Stadium was fit for baseball. And the fact that nobody has moved there tells me that it's not fit for baseball yet. And I don't know if it will be anytime soon.
What's the biggest holdback for Montreal? Is it the Canadian dollar, or is it the fact that nobody really wants to step up and own a Major League Baseball franchise in Montreal?
I think it's the latter. And it's, you think about it, with Rogers owning the Blue Jays, Bell could buy a team and put them in Montreal, and it would be a natural rivalry. Do you remember back in the day, it used to be the breweries that owned the teams?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and now it's the communications conglomerates that own the teams. And so I think if Bell bought a team and put it in Montreal, it would be ideal. You could have on Sportsnet, you'd have the Blue Jays. On TSN, you could have the Expos all year long, and you'd have to have arguments in your house about which team you're going to watch, the Expos or the Blue Jays. Because I can remember back in '81 when they were playing in the playoffs in that labor shortened or punctuated season, and when they were playing against Philadelphia first and then Los Angeles in the NLCS. You could walk down any street in Canada and shoot a cannon down there, and you wouldn't hit anybody because everybody was in their homes watching the Expos in '81. And I would love to see a team back in Montreal. Hopefully they'd be the Expos again. But my fear is that it's not coming for a while.
I got a couple more comments from George Brown. He agrees they need to build a new stadium or renovate Olympic Stadium, which I think they're doing. Grislow, who's an American, she's watching on Instagram. She says, I feel Montreal is a one sports city. I disagree with her. I do feel with the proper ownership, Montreal has a long history of baseball. With the proper stadium, proper ownership, I think Montreal would support a baseball team. And also, I feel the NBA. I really feel if they had the right arena in Montreal for an NBA team and the right ownership, I think Montreal could support 3 teams plus the Alouettes.
That'd be interesting. That would definitely be interesting. And as you know, Montreal, there was always an issue, I think, attracting American players to Montreal. It's as close to a European city as we have in North America. It's a wonderful city. I always loved playing hockey in Montreal. I loved going to Montreal for tournaments and stuff like that. The players who played in Montreal loved Montreal. The players who visited Montreal loved Montreal. Whether you could get guys to stay there on long-term deals, that's the other thing. That's the only question. I mean, Montreal, to me, I love the city of Montreal. I love going to visit there. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but it's a place that I always loved going. I always loved playing hockey in Quebec. I always loved playing there. If you were playing poorly, the fans would let you know. If you were playing well, the fans would let you know. And I've been screamed at, catcalled, heckled on days when I wasn't playing well, and then on days where I did play well, coming off the ice, having fans running down the stands to give you a high five on the way to the dressing room. Nothing like it. It's the best feeling in the world.
Who's the greatest expo of all time, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I loved that team in the 80s. I loved Andre Dawson. It hurts now to listen to the interviews and hear him say that he wants his hat replaced in the Hall of Fame with the Chicago Cubs hat. I can understand why he said that because of the way he was treated by ownership when he was leaving Montreal. But I loved Andre Dawson. I loved Gary Carter. How could you not? There were so many great moments in Montreal and so many moments that were just electric. I can remember FP Santangelo going up from the Ottawa Lynx and playing in Montreal. I can remember Curtis Pride going up from the Ottawa Lynx, and he was one of the first almost 100% hearing impaired players to play in the major leagues in a long, long time. And he hit a double that day, and the fans gave him a standing ovation. And as he stood on second base, he said, "I couldn't hear them, but I could feel it in my heart." And it's just the guys like that, the fans' favorites. Those were guys I loved, but I loved the lunch pail guys too. I loved Stan Pappy. I loved Terry Francona when he played there. I loved Tim Wallach when he played there. Rusty Staub, absolutely the first big star in Montreal. And I wrote a long story. You can read it at the sportslunatics.com about Rusty Staub and his time in Montreal and his time in Houston, where he played before he played in Montreal, and why he wanted out of Houston, and how much he loved playing in Quebec. And he came from Louisiana, came from a place where French was not necessarily spoken all the time, but it wasn't unfamiliar either. And so when he got to Montreal, he learned French so he could communicate with the fans and in French. And just a guy that was so embraced by people in Montreal and so loved in Montreal as well. And when he got traded to the Mets, I believe, for Ken Singleton, Mike Jorgensen, and somebody else, it was like a kick in the teeth to a lot of fans in Montreal.
By the way, my late dad took me to two Expos games in 1984, July 27th, 29th, July 84. We went on a family trip to Philadelphia, and my dad's like, we got to go to Veterans Stadium. And I got to see Pete Rose at the Montreal Expo, along with Dawson, Carter, Tim Raines, take on Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, and the Phillies. And back then, they didn't have the cameras and stuff like they do now. I still have the ticket stub and the program, but I just wish I wish we had the camera and the technology. I would have had more pictures back there and as well. Just being able to see Pete Rose play, especially at the Montreal Expo, that's really special. I was very lucky to see that.
That's a blessing. That's a gift, being able to see that. I was blessed because I got to see baseball games in Montreal, and I got to see games in Toronto. But I mean, you look at the playoff teams now. I've seen games at Wrigley. I've seen games at Fenway. I've seen games in Seattle because we lived in Seattle for a little bit. I saw the first game in Seattle after 9/11. I saw the last game in 2001 where the fans showered Alex Rodriguez because he was there with the Texas Rangers and he left Seattle for a big contract. They showered him with Monopoly money on his way off the field. It was hilarious. But yeah, I've been blessed that I've gotten to see so many games in so many places as well. I was in the Forum in '93 when they won the Cup. The last time a Canadian team won the Cup, we were in the Forum there. Got to walk down St. Catherine Street, high-fiving everybody on the way to Sir Winston Churchill's on Crescent Street, the big bar at the time that was in Montreal. Just wonderful, wonderful experiences and wonderful times. I'm glad that you told me that story about '84 and going to see them play in Philadelphia.
I was very lucky, and I still have the ticket stub. It was the Phillies 100th year, I think, something too. We one seat we sat in the 7-Eleven Super Box, and then the Sunday game we sat in the 700 level, which was kind of the nosebleeds. And as a kid, 12 years old back then, I know people hated the Vet and couldn't stand it. As a 12-year-old kid, I was in awe of the Vet and seeing the Philly Fanatic and seeing these legends. There were so many Hall of Famers between the Expos and Phillies in '84. And it's a shame. Two of the best Expos teams in history were affected by Major League Baseball work stoppages. The '81 season and the '94 team. Do you feel the '94 team could have won the World Series if they didn't shut down?
They could have. We don't know who their opponent might have been. They could have definitely won the National League. Cleveland had a really good team in '94, and so it's not a lock that the Expos would have played the Yankees that year. It could have happened. They could have played Cleveland as well. Cleveland had a really good team. But yeah, the 94 team certainly had the tools to do it. You know, you could replay that series a million times and we wouldn't know who would win because it could have been anybody that year. But yeah, the Expos certainly had the tools to do it.
Grislow, who's a friend of mine, she's watching. She says Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, and I agree with her. He should have been in the Hall of Fame before he passed away, in my opinion.
We all know that Pete Rose was a Hall of Fame level player. The fact that he is the all-time leader in hits, it should put him in the Hall of Fame. Personally, I've always felt, and I've said it on my show, I've said it online, wherever, they can put Pete. First of all, the Hall of Fame is not a part of Major League Baseball. It is its own entity. They can do whatever they want. I've always felt the Hall of Fame should have him on a plaque, and at the bottom of his plaque, there should be an asterisk saying, barred from Major League Baseball in 1989. And to me, I would have no problem with him in the Hall of Fame. We know, as fans, we recognize who Hall of Famers are. Pete Rose was a Hall of Fame level player, and he should be in the Hall of Fame, but as I said, with an asterisk at the bottom of his plaque.
Hey, Howie, I'm going to I'd like to bring you on again for part 2 as we wrap up this show. Where can our audience purchase your book? And what has been the overall response of your book so far? Is it available on Kindle, digital, and is it available on hard copy as well?
It's a paperback. It's all paperback. Okay. You can get the ebook as well get both on Amazon. They're both available on Amazon. That's the easiest way to get it. If you have Prime, it'll be at your house the next day or at the latest 2 days after you order it. But yeah, Amazon is the best place to order the book. $23 for the paperback version. I believe the Kindle or the e-version is $9.99. But yeah, the reaction to the book has been so positive. There's a guy in Ottawa who's a super fan, and he said to me, he said, I wouldn't change a word of that book. It is awesome. There was an ex-CFL player who told me that, how did he word it? He said, you know, your book takes us on a wild roller coaster ride with the team, and it's wonderful. There was a review that came out, and they talked about different aspects of the book, and everything was glowingly positive. It came out, it was a CFL chapter of the Ottawa Alumni Association. And so, you know, the fact that they all like it, it made me feel wonderful. And that's been the reaction that I've got so far. I haven't had a negative reaction come to me yet. But yeah, the easiest way to get the book, and I can't stress this enough, go to Amazon.com, type in Howie Mooney, type in An Unlikely Story, and it'll pop up on your screen. And my other books will be at the bottom if you scroll down as well.
Can you show us a copy of your book on here live?
Here is An Unlikely Story. There it is right there. Picture of George Brancato on the cover. How the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders just missed a miracle. I will put this down here. Here's the first book that I wrote. It's called Crazy Days and Wild Nights. It's a collection of 17 different stories that are out of the ordinary. Here's the second book that I wrote. It's out on Amazon as well. It's called More Crazy Days and Wild Nights. It's there as well. And my most recent book before An Unlikely Story is The Consequences of Chance. It is in the same vein as those ones. It has, I think, 17 different stories in that one, 19 or whatever, 19, 11, and 17 anyway in those first 3 books.
I think you're going to have to write a 5th book about the Montreal Expos.
I have. No, you know what? I leave that to Danny Gallagher. He's a friend of mine. I don't want to, walk on his garden, but I have another book that's ready to go. I'm waiting. I want to wait until 2026 to put that one out. It's in the same vein as the first 3.
Howie, as we wrap up this show, can you just tell us a little bit about your Sports Lunatics show, which is a sports history podcast, and how you got involved in it, and maybe some of your most memorable episodes so far?
Well, a buddy of mine, Sean Levine, used to be a producer at the Fan 590 at the Score. He worked for a long time on XM Radio, and then he was at TSN 1050 in Toronto for a long time, and he and I were good buddies. And we used to get together, we'd drink beer and watch sports, and we'd comment on things as we went, and we'd tell stories to each other, of people that we knew. And he says, we should do a podcast. And he said that a lot. And then one day, it was February of 2020, and he comes over to my house with 2 microphones. And I said, what's this? He says, we're doing a podcast. We've always talked about doing a podcast. We're going to do a podcast. And our first show in February of 2020 was the 40th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid in 1980. And that was our first show. And you can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts. It's one of the ones we curated and put up when we started managing our own podcasts. And so, that was our first show. We've had a lot of fun over the years doing it. Our latest show was our top 10 memories of the Blue Jays post seasons going back to 1985. We talk about the Vladdy Grand Slam. I didn't include it in my list, and Shawnee castigated me for it. But our latest show was on that. We lost 3 goalies recently, 3 big superstar goalies: Ken Dryden, Eddie Giacomin, and Bernie Perron. We did shows on each of those guys. You can find them wherever you find your podcasts, or at thesportslunatics.com.
Is your show broadcast live stream like this setup?
No, we don't do live streams. We record them, and we have shows on YouTube. You can go back and look at old shows on YouTube. We don't have all of them up on YouTube, but most of our shows that we do now are strictly audio, and you can find those wherever you find your podcasts.
And your YouTube channel is what, the Sports Lunatics on YouTube?
Yeah, do a search for Sports Lunatics and it'll come up.
Hey, Howie, as we wrap this show up, this is a new segment I created. It's basically for my guests. Ask the host CDP a question. Do you have a question for me before we wrap this up?
Tell me about your experience covering sports as a reporter, going to different places. I know I love these stories. You talked about Buffalo. You've talked about the Argos, but where else have you been? What else have you done?
I've interviewed people from the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. I've interviewed Jesse Barfield, John Olerud, Jose Batista, Buck Martinez, people I grew up idolizing, and I just approached them as myself, like the way we're talking, and these guys just were like, yeah, we'll give you some time and do you some interviews. And I've interviewed guys I never thought I'd get a chance to do it, and the Buffalo Bisons, Casey Candell I've interviewed, and a number of the Blue Jay players down there. And I just, when I do my interview, be yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes my first interview, I got the player's name wrong, and they laughed about it, but they were cool about it. And I love doing the virtual show, but there's nothing better than doing a live interview with a player, a coach, or a person. You really have to think on your feet and really have to listen. And I just try to be myself, and I've been very, very fortunate and lucky in my opportunities. One regret I have in my media career so far, the NFL Draft 2024 in Detroit, I had a chance to have a selfie with Jaden Daniels, and also had a chance to do one of the very first interviews with him, and I'm kicking myself for that. So now when I do my media opportunities, if I have a chance to interview or talk to somebody, I'm going to make sure I at least attempt it, because Jaden Daniels, he was drafted in Detroit, and I really wish I could go back and change 5 minutes of that whole thing, because it would have been nice to have a picture with him, but also do a little quick interview with Jaden Daniels, who I think is going to have a long career, successful with the Washington Commanders.
You learn things from experience, don't you? You figure you missed that opportunity, but you're never going to miss that opportunity again.
Absolutely. And meeting Joe Bowen and Dan Dunleavy. Dan Dunleavy does a great job with the Buffalo Sabres. And they treat me like I went to school for this. And it's just, at first I felt like I didn't belong, but a lot of people in the profession have really treated me like one of their own. And I'm going to do that to the younger people who are interested in getting into radio or media. They want to get my advice. I'm going to pay it forward back.
I've always told my son, if you're somewhere where you're not comfortable, act like you belong, and nobody will know.
Absolutely. And one of my friends from TSN, Matthew Shinetti, who does a great job with the CFL on TSN, gave me some advice. He said, Chris, you're going to make mistakes. The only way you get better as a professional to learn from them. But when you try to be perfect, that's when more mistakes happen. And Matthew Shinetti loves the CFL as much as anybody. And he's been really great with me. And I've learned to keep an open mind because sometimes you have a perception of people, like with Mike Wilner. I know when he was with the Jays and stuff like that, fans didn't necessarily like him. But the one time at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, he waited for me 15 minutes after the fact and gave me an interview. And I really never thought, I was shocked, and he was really great to talk to. And I tell people, don't judge someone based on what they are like on TV and radio necessarily.
Who's the nicest athlete or coach or sports person that you've met that surprised you with how nice they were?
I guess Casey Candell.
Wow.
Casey, he always laughs at me. He's great. John Tavares, who's the uncle of John Tavares, the Maple Leafs. He intimidated me when I first started. I was like, oh my God, this is John Tavares, the Wayne Gretzky of indoor lacrosse.
Yes.
And he's gotten to know me as well. And John Tavares and Mark Savard I've interviewed, and I would say John Tavares. He's not as if you've never met him before, you're really intimidated by him. But once he gets to know you and you're there at a regular basis, he gets to open up to you. So I would say John Tavares, the Hall of Fame lacrosse player.
Excellent answer. I love the answers here to my questions.
And by the way, Ottawa's got a lacrosse team now too, so yep. I'm going to have to get down to Ottawa. National Lacrosse League is a great league, and it reminds me of the CFL, and hopefully it'll continue to grow and as well as the CFL as well.
Yeah, touch wood. It all finds its footing and maintains its footing.
Finally, Howie, where can our audience follow you on social media and the best way of contacting you?
I still call it Twitter. I'm at Howie Mooney, Mooney. On Instagram, I'm there. I can't remember if it's at Mooney Howie. I think it is. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I'm on Facebook too, but we have our Facebook page, the Sports Lunatics Radio Show page on Facebook, and you can get through to me there.
Hey, well, Howie, I want to say thank you so much for giving us over 90 minutes of our time. I would definitely like to have you back on again for part 2, and maybe even talk to you a little bit about the impact Ken Dryden had on the Montreal Canadiens and hockey and politics as well.
We can definitely talk about that. We can talk about how Ed Jockerman was traded out of New York when Emile Francis told him, as long as I'm here, you'll always be my guy. And the betrayal that Ed Jockerman felt about that. We can talk about a million things, Chris, anything you want.
By the way, CFL Grey Cup prediction, since I got you on Howie, who do you see in the Grey Cup this year?
I've been with Saskatchewan all year. I've had people laugh at me about that. I still think that they seem to come prepared to every game, even the games they don't look good in. I think that Saskatchewan could do it. I would love to see BC do it. I'd love to see Nathan Rourke, a Canadian quarterback, win a Grey Cup, first one since Russ Jackson. It'll be interesting. I mean, the poor Argos and the poor Red Blacks, I would have loved to have seen them in the playoffs in the postseason, but unfortunately we're not going to get to do that. But if I have to make a pick right now, and you're putting me on the spot, I'd say Saskatchewan.
I'm going to go with Montreal. I know Hamilton folks are going to be upset with me. I think Hamilton is an excellent team and an excellent chance to get into the Grey Cup. But Montreal has that defense. They're well coached. They have a good defense, good special teams. And if Davis Alexander can stay healthy, I really feel the Alouettes are capable of upsetting the Cats in the East Final. And as for BC, at times they look great, and then at times they don't look great. It's consistency, but Nathan Rourke gives them a chance in the playoffs. In Winnipeg, I still wouldn't count out the Blue Bombers. Mike O'Shea and these Blue Bombers have gone to 5 Grey Cups in a row, which is the first time since the 78 to 83 Edmonton Elks have done it. So don't count Winnipeg out. But I'd say right now I would go with Montreal out of the East and Saskatchewan out of the West.
The big wild card for Montreal is Davis Alexander, and it all depends on whether he's able to play or not. And if he can't, then I don't give them much of a chance.
Howie, like I said, we've got CFL tonight. We've got Toronto and Saskatchewan at 9:00, and we got baseball. I got to get your prediction. My Detroit Tigers and Seattle Mariners, they should be in probably the second or third inning right now. Who do you see coming out of this game in series?
I had written Detroit off, earlier in the series. I thought it was going to be all Seattle, but they fought back. And I would love to see Detroit in. I have friends in Detroit, and I would love, in the Detroit area, I would love to see the Tigers win for them. But like I said, I had written them off earlier in the series, but it's a short series. I was hoping Philadelphia would win against the Dodgers, but it was the Dodgers, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I as a Jays fan, I'm happy that this series is going to the limit because it's going to tax their bullpens and tax their starting pitching. We'll see what happens though on Sunday night when the Blue Jays host the ALCS. I still can't believe I'm saying that.
I know, hard to believe. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I love the Tigers. I'm a huge Tigers fan, but I don't think they have enough. Even if they get by Seattle, I don't think they have enough punch power in their lineup in a 7-game series against Blue Jays. So right now I'm going with Toronto and the Dodgers in the World Series, but I think the Dodgers will win in 6 games because I just think the Dodgers still have the best roster in baseball, and Dave Roberts doesn't get enough credit as a manager, 2-time world champion.
You've been to Comerica, I imagine?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been to Comerica too. The last time I was there was probably 2015, I think. My son and I did a trip around the Great Lakes. 2 games in Detroit, we went to Canton, Ohio for the Football Hall of Fame. Then we went to Cleveland for a game in Cleveland. Walked down to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there, and had a great time. Then back up Euclid to the stadium, and then we stopped in Pittsburgh on the way home and saw a game there. And PNC Park is just one of the most beautiful stadiums and the beautiful locations and settings. And the people of Pittsburgh, I couldn't get over how sweet and generous they were, to us Canadians coming down there for our little road trip. And the guy sitting beside me, he says, "Are you staying at the Holiday Inn over here?" And I said, "No, we're staying." And I told him where we were staying. He says, "We'll drive you there. We're going by there on our way back to to our house. So we'll drop you off." That doesn't happen. Strangers don't drop you off at your hotel. But it happened in Pittsburgh, and the people were just so warm and so personable. I loved going to Pittsburgh.
My 2 favorite ballparks so far, PNC Park and Fenway Park. Comerica Park is nice, but it's not the same as Tiger Stadium. So PNC Park and Fenway Park are my 2 favorite ballparks. Yankee Stadium is nice, the new one, but to me, it's not like the original one. But Fenway Park and PNC Park are my 2 favorite ballparks, and I've been to 13 so far.
I've been to a bunch of 2, and I was in what was then Safeco Field in 2001, the first game after 9/11, the last game of the season as well. I've been to Comerica, I've been to Wrigley, I've been to Fenway. I loved Fenway. I loved the tour of Fenway. I loved when they took us down to the basement, to the archives down there. It's just amazing. But when you're in there, you just feel like, wow, it's almost the same as it was when they built it more than 100 years ago. And you can just imagine what it was like with the people in their little hats and their ties and everything, watching the games back then. But yeah, we've lived some charmed lives. There are people that have lived and seen a lot more than we have, but we've been able to see some things.
Been very lucky. And before I wrap it up, a viewer on Instagram, Grislow, she just wants to say great show with Chris and Howie. And I always say this, it's the guests that make a podcast or a talk show. I'm just very lucky. And I want to say thank you to reaching out to me. And I'm sorry I didn't have you on my show sooner, but you're number 601 and you have an open invite to come back on again too, Howie.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your generosity and your kind words. I absolutely appreciate being here with you.
And that's what I love about doing this show. I wasn't 100% before I came on tonight, but as soon as that camera comes on, my adrenaline kicks in, and it's just like therapy. And I just love doing what I'm doing, and I can tell you do as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Howie, and enjoy the CFL, join the Major League Ball player, the MLB playoffs, and also the NFL too. This is a great time of the year, and I want to wish you and your family a happy Canadian Thanksgiving Day this Monday.
Same to you, Chris. It's we got a lot of parties and dinners going on.
Thank you so much. Give me a little time tonight, Howie, and I'll send you the full video, the audio, and I'll edit it into some reels and clips, and I'll make sure I tag you in as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, that concludes season 11, episode 51, overall 601 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. And I want to say thank you to my guest again tonight, Howie Mooney. He is a co-host of the Sports Lunatics Show, a sports history podcast. And Mooney has written 4 books, including his latest one about the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders. You can find it on Amazon. And it's called, I think the name of the book again was called Just About a Miracle, about how the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders nearly became a miracle. It's a story about a team that was 5-11, and nobody thought they were going to beat Montreal in the East semifinals, and then Montreal in the East final, and then they were up 20-1 in the Grey Cup as well. And if you've never seen the 1981 CFL Grey Cup championship game, it is on YouTube, and Edmonton was a 22.5 point favorite in that Grey Cup, and Ottawa was winning that Grey Cup for half the game from 20-1, but unfortunately Edmonton made some adjustments in the second half and went on to win their 4th straight Grey Cup 26-23 over the Ottawa Red Blacks as well. And speaking of Ottawa's football team, the Ottawa Red Blacks are playing Monday at 1 o'clock, I think 1 or 1:30, against the Montreal Alouettes in Montreal. So CFL on TSN, Thanksgiving edition, Montreal and Ottawa, I believe at 1 o'clock as well. And we have CFL on tonight. The Toronto Argonauts, who have been eliminated from this year's CFL playoffs, 5-11, are taking on their former head coach, Corey Mace, and AJ Ouellette, the running back. Saskatchewan, Toronto, 9 o'clock. And yours truly will be down at Hamilton Stadium tomorrow at 3 o'clock as freelance media covering the Hamilton Tiger Cats Calgary Stampeders game, 3 o'clock on TSN, or you can listen to it on the Tiger Cats audio network with Rick Zamperin and Simone Lawrence, along with Bubba O'Neill as well. So that is about it. As we wrap up this show, I want to make another announcement here. And my next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by BarryCullin.com. It's going to take place on Tuesday, October 14th. Not one, but 2 shows. The first show is at 5:30 with guest Tim O'Shea from the Buffalo News. We're going to talk about the impact of the Buffalo Bills' new stadium and a little Bills and Sabres. And at 8 p.m. that day, I have special guest Slammy Sammy, a pro wrestler out of Pennsylvania. So 5:30, Tim O'Shea from the Buffalo News, and at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, pro wrestler from Pennsylvania, Slamming Sammy as well. And the next Argo Bounce podcast show, episode 14, will take place next week with Nick Small and myself as well. Again, I want to say thank you to Howie Mooney for coming on here. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching the show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, and for everyone listening to this on the audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Good Pods, and wherever podcasts are available. And for everybody in Canada, I want to wish you a happy Canadian Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your families and friends on Sunday and Monday in some cases. And again, check out the Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show this Tuesday, October 14th, 5:30, Tim O'Shea, 8 p.m. pro wrestler slamming Sammy, a pro wrestler out of Pennsylvania as well. So enjoy the CFL, Enjoy the NFL and the Major League Baseball playoffs. Go Tigers. Hopefully, Tarek Screwdrill can pitch him to a Game 5 win tonight over Seattle as well. And I'm going to enjoy my sports weekend, and we'll see you back here Tuesday for another edition of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph, Ottawa. Check out their website, barrycullen.com. Have a great evening, great weekend, everybody, and happy Canadian Thanksgiving. And we'll talk to you next week for another edition of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show.